Hi, everyone. Welcome to the AI Visibility Action Plan webinar series. This is webinar 1 of 3, the new rules of AI search. My name is Alex Kornberg. I'm a marketing lead here at Trustpilot, and I'll be your MC throughout this session. Before we get going, I just want to let you know that we will have a Q&A session at the tail end of the session. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end. So with that, I can now pass it to our speaker. His name is Justin Catroni. He is the Director of Product Evangelism and Customer Education here at Trustpilot. Justin, great to have you.
Thanks, Alex. I'm excited to be here. Hey, everybody. It's great to see you all. And I'm excited to talk to you today about the new rules of AI search. All of us in marketing, MarTech, and just digital business in general have seen AI and the tremendous change it's had in such a short time. And we're excited to dive into this topic and to help marketers understand it a little bit better. So this session is really meant to be an introduction to AI search and answer engine optimization, or AEO. The goal is to help you understand what AEO is, why it matters, and the basic mechanics behind how it works. This is not a technical session, and it's also not a tactical session. Instead, this is about understanding the shift that's already underway and some of the fundamentals of how AI search works. We're going to start with an introduction to AEO, then we'll focus on why it matters to your company and your business, and finally, we'll dive into a non-technical overview of how it works and how you can stay visible in AI answers. By the end, you should be able to explain what AEO is and some of the basics of how it works. So let's start with what's changing today. So for years, digital discovery followed a really familiar pattern. People searched, scanned links, visited websites, and ultimately made decisions themselves. How many people remember clicking on a link, reading the content on a website, clicking the back button, then clicking another link over and over again? That model is actually breaking down. Today, consumers are increasingly asking AI systems direct questions and getting direct answers, not a list of links. In other words, people are delegating decision-making to AI. This shift is happening faster than most technology changes we've seen. According to Capgemini, 58% of consumers now replace traditional search with generative AI for recommendations. Just 2 years ago, that number was closer to 25%. McKinsey also predicts that unprepared businesses risk a 20% to 50% decline in traditional organic traffic as discovery moves into AI answers. You can actually measure if this is happening to your business right now. Just take a look at the trend in your organic traffic in Google Analytics or whatever measurement tool you use. Has it been steadily decreasing, or has the growth slowed? That could be attributed to AI search. Many of these new AI systems are completely new surfaces. ChatGPT is a new destination that didn't even exist 5 years ago. That's created a behavioral change in consumers. And that change is projected to influence $750 billion in revenue by 2028. So if we look at the big picture, what we see is that AI systems now sit between brands and consumers at the moment of discovery. Consumers are asking questions, and AI systems are choosing which information and brands consumers discover. If we think about this more deeply, in this new paradigm, customers never visit a website. The AI system answers the user's question before a click ever happens. There's a new term to describe this behavior. It's called a zero-click search. And this shift fundamentally changes how visibility works. So how do you stay visible if AI systems choose which brands are included in AI answers? This brings us to answer engine optimization, or AEO. Answer engine optimization is the process of improving your online presence so it's included in answers generated by AI systems. When I say AI systems, I'm talking about tools like ChatGPT, Google's AI Mode, Gemini, Claude, and Perplexity. In simple terms, AEO is about showing up in answers. Some people talk about AEO as the new SEO, and there are some similarities. Like SEO, it's all about visibility. But unlike SEO, the goal isn't to rank for specific keywords. The goal is to be selected by AI systems as part of the answer. Let me explain. But first, let's discuss how AI search engines actually create answers. When you ask an AI system a simple question, for example, tell me about the planet Jupiter, a specific sequence of things happens behind the scenes. First, the system uses natural language processing to interpret your request. In this case, it recognizes that you're asking for general information about a known planet, the planet Jupiter. It doesn't connect to a fancy database or it doesn't go out and search the web. Instead, what it actually does is it relies on its brain, called a large language model. Now, that model was trained on lots and lots of data, almost like an encyclopedia worth of data, information about everything. So when you ask the question, the answer is generated in real time based on that knowledge that the model was trained on. It's not retrieved from a database. For well-established topics, this works really, really well because the models are trained on massive amounts of data. But when the user asks a question about something that is not included in the training data, the system has to operate differently. And this happens very often. So let's talk about that. When you ask an AI search system a question and the system needs more information to answer the question, it will search the internet for information. It literally does searches like you or I might do. So after it interprets your request, it creates some searches and it collects information from across the web. This is called retrieval. Then, after it retrieves the information, it evaluates the information and identifies the pieces that will be most helpful in answering the user's question. It looks at a lot of different factors here. It looks at things like how the information relates to the question. It looks at how the information is structured, and it looks at how recent the information might be. Finally, it uses the information that it's collected, or the most useful parts of it, and it synthesizes an answer. Remember, these are generative systems. They generate answers based on the content that it's pulled from the internet. Now, within that answer, it actually cites the information that it collected from the internet so you can review the information yourself. The citation is like a footnote. So let's take a look at an example. Here we see a ChatGPT response, and you can actually see the citations within the answer, right? They look just like little footnotes at the end of each line. Now, we see this a lot at Trustpilot. We see these AI systems visit our website, collect data, and then use it when they build answers for their users. So now that we know the basics of how these things work, we need to think differently. That means the key question is no longer, can I rank first or can I rank on the first page? The question is, will information about my business be used in an answer? So let's go a little bit deeper. How do we influence that whole retrieve, evaluate, and citation process? Now, to structure this discussion, we're going to use a simple framework that we call the 3 Rs. The 3 Rs stand for relevance, ranking, and recency. These are not hacks or tricks. They're conditions AI systems look for when selecting information. Relevance pertains to the content and how capable it is at answering the question. Ranking is related to where people are talking about a company or a brand and corroborating information about that brand. And recency is all about the freshness of the information. So let's dive a little bit deeper into each of these. The first key factor is relevance. Relevance is about how information answers a specific question. Broad or generic content performs poorly in AI answers. AI systems look for precise matches to user intent. Remember, AI systems want the end user to have a great experience. That means answering their questions quickly and accurately. So having content that aligns with what an AI system is looking for increases the chances that your brand and your content will be retrieved when cited by an AI system. So how is that different than what we do today when we talk about search? Well, normally when we create content today, we optimize that content for search engines. And that optimization is mostly built around keywords because search engines match user queries to index pages. And the job with search engine optimization is to signal alignment between a search phrase or a search query to a page on our website. Now, there are other things that we do with search engine optimization, like optimize for metadata, or we structure our pages in a certain way to make it more accessible to search engines. But for AI search, you want to optimize for questions and intent. AI systems don't just retrieve pages, they generate answers. When a user enters a prompt into AI search, the user speaks in full layered commands. The system interprets meaning, it synthesizes multiple sources, and it produces a response. So our job is no longer creating content that is relevant to a keyword. Our job is clarity, completeness, and authority on important questions. So the more information that directly relates to the user question, the more likely the AI system will choose our content. So when we talk about relevance in AI search, we're not talking about keywords anymore. We're talking about whether content related to your brand actually answers a user's specific question. AI systems evaluate relevance by looking at intent alignment. They ask, does this content directly address the user's question? And here's a really important part. Answer engines don't just look at what you say about your brand. They check whether your claims line up with what customers actually experience. For example, if the user asks about the shipping experience for an e-commerce business, the AI system will not just look at the shipping policy page for that business. It'll also look for real human experiences with shipping information for that business. It's about multiple pieces of relevant information. The content includes third-party content created by users on different platforms. Now, let's move on and kind of summarize what we talked about here when it comes to relevance, right? And the simple thing to remember is you want first and third-party content that solves user problems. And this can be encapsulated in the question, does this actually solve the user's problem? Does this content actually answer the user's question? So now let's move on to the next factor, and that factor is ranking. Ranking is not about search position. It's about whether information is corroborated by trusted sources, right? We just started talking about this a little bit. AI systems cross-check information across the web. As I mentioned, when an AI system is looking for information to answer a question, it looks at many different sources. It doesn't just go to your website, retrieve one piece of information, and create an answer. It consults many different sources for information. These sources include your own content, like your website and your blog, but they also include third-party websites, like review websites, or other types of media, like video sites or PR websites. Third-party credibility plays a major role here. Reviews on authoritative platforms and content across the internet pertaining to the user's question all matter. When you think about it, AI search is trying to replicate what we used to do when we were searching. We would click through to multiple pages, we would read information, and then we would make decisions, right? We were looking for information to help us feel confident and to help us build trust in the decision we were making. But AI search is doing that for us now. So AI needs to collect information from multiple places in order to validate claims, right? If you think about it, the AI system is trying to build a trustworthy answer. Now, if the AI system can get information that represents genuine human experiences, it will use it, right? Because it can't really synthesize that data. So let's recap ranking. In AI search, ranking is not about where you appear on a results page. There is no results page. Ranking is about validation. When an AI system decides whether to include information in an answer, It looks for confirmation across trusted third-party sources. It's asking a very human question. Is this information supported elsewhere? AI systems don't take a single source at face value. They cross-check claims across reviews, authoritative platforms, industry publications, and maybe other media sites. The more consistent those external signals are, the more confident the AI becomes. Think of it as a web of validation, right? Multiple independent sources pointing to the same conclusion. And this is why ranking is earned. You can't declare yourself credible. Your position in AI answers is determined by how many trusted sources validate your claims. Right? Ranking isn't about what you say, it's about who else says it, especially real people. So if we could sum up ranking in one little statement, I would say, is this information supported elsewhere, right? Ranking is about a web of credible evidence rooted in real human experiences. The final factor is recency. AI systems strongly favor information that is fresh and up to date. This makes sense, right? AI wants to answer questions accurately. This is especially true for decision-based or time-sensitive questions. If information appears stale, it is far less likely to be included in an answer. Here's a quick example. A user enters a prompt into AI search about a company. Let's say this is lower in the conversion funnel. The user is thinking about a particular company and wants to learn more about the business before making a purchase. Well, in this case, AI search wants recent, up-to-date information. We talked about this when we discussed how these systems work. If the AI system relied solely on its training data, it might not have any information about the actual customer experience, especially a recent customer experience. So in this case, it's critical to have recent information about the actual customer experience so AI can answer the question accurately. So if we were to recap recency, recency is about whether information reflects the current state of a business. AI systems strongly favor data that is fresh, active, and continuously updated, especially for questions that involve decisions, comparisons, or recommendations. And recency is not just about publication date. It's about visible signals that show a brand is active right now, signals that indicate real, ongoing customer experiences. This is why high-velocity data streams perform really well in AI answers. Things like customer views and updated feedback give AI systems confidence, right? They help it trust what's being talked about for that brand. From the AI perspective, stale information increases risk. If there's no recent signal or no information about real human interactions with the brand, there's no way to know what's going on with that company or that brand. To stay recommendable, your brand needs a continuous stream of fresh, verified data points. So if we had to sum this up, maybe in one single statement, recency answers one simple question. Is this information safe to use right now? So hopefully you've got a good sense of how AI search works and some of the core concepts that influence how AI search creates answers. At this point, you're probably wondering, like, where do I get started? Now, we're not going to get into tactics today, but here are some high-level things, some high-level questions that you can ask in order to determine where you might get started. So start thinking about relevance, right? And think about, are you answering the right questions, right? Are you creating content about the right questions? And when we talk about the right questions, we're talking about questions that answer real consumer questions, right? And so they're asking things about your brand, they're asking things about your company. Do you have the answers out there? Do they exist out there, right? That's really important to have. So the next thing to look at is ranking, right? And so we just talked about questions. Now it's not only about you answering those questions, but it's also about our customers answering those questions for you. Are people talking about your brand in different places out there? And what are they saying? Do they talk about the entire customer experience? Do they talk about the good and the bad? Do they answer questions that might help other people that are trying to make a decision, right? So it's all about where are conversations happening about your brand, where are conversations happening about your business, and what is being said, right? Now, as we talked about, AI systems want access to that. So you also need to think about, are those conversations accessible to AI systems? And finally, when we talk about recency, right? Like recency is not overly complicated. It's, is there up to date information out there, right? And it's not just up to date information that I'm publishing. When we think about ranking, when we think about those third party conversations, are there constant current conversations happening about my brand, about the user experience, right? Are people talking about the experience they have with my business? And is that accessible to AI systems, and is it fresh so that the AI systems know that this information is recent and it's actually talks about things that are happening now. So as I mentioned, this is just the first of 3 webinars. Alex talked about it at the beginning. Our goal was really to introduce the topic of answer engine optimization and set the stage for the next few webinars. I'm really excited about the next few webinars. We're going to go a lot deeper. This was really just to create a foundation. In our next session, we're going to go deep on content, especially owned content. We'll talk about generating content ideas. We'll talk about formatting content. And in our third webinar, we'll get into 2 different topics. We're going to talk about reviews and the important part that reviews play in an AI visibility strategy. We'll also talk about Trustpilot and how it can help with that part of AI visibility. And we're also going to talk about metrics and measurement, something that's very popular right now and near and dear to my heart. So I'm very excited about that. Okay, and now we have some time for questions, and I think we got a few in during the webinar.
Yes, we did. Thank you, Justin. Uh, we can jump right in. This first question is it has to do with the shift from search to AI search. The question is, should an AI strategy uh, replace our traditional SEO strategy?
That's a really good question. And the short answer is no. Search engine optimization is still really important for businesses. Over the last 20 years, I think there's been a lot of SEO is dead type messages, and it's definitely not. And the simple reason is that, search engines are not going anywhere. Bing, Google, they're still around, and they're going to be around. They're going to be around next week. They're going to be around next month. They're going to be around for years. And so it's important to constantly optimize and have an SEO strategy. Now, with AEO, it's really to start thinking about what are the things that I need to be doing differently to make sure I'm appearing in answers as well as search engines, right? And while there are some similarities that we talked about, there are some differences. And we're going to get into that, especially in the next one when we talk in the next webinar, when we start to talk about content. We're really going to go deep on how to design that content, how to structure that content so it appears in answer engines. But the short answer is no, you still need to be working on SEO.
Amazing. Thank you. Another question for you. How does the AI choose which sources to cite?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we got into this a little bit during the presentation. And I should say that a lot of these systems, they're proprietary, right? While we understand some parts of them, we don't understand everything. So in that regard, it's kind of like search engine optimization, where it's a little bit of science and it's a little bit of art. Now, with that said, we kind of like to think about optimizing for AI answers using our 3 R's framework, right? Thinking about relevance, ranking, and recency, right? And so when we look at that framework, relevance is all about creating content that is relevant to the questions that people are asking AI search. We talk about ranking. We talk about having a web of information that supports the claims that you make about your brand, right? Third party information, especially data and information that represents the real user experience, right? That's important. AI systems look at that. And recency, right? When we talk about, what does AI choose? They're looking for fresh information. They're looking for recent user experiences. in order to incorporate those things into their answers. So that's a little bit about like how they go about choosing which sources to cite.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we have time for just about one more question. And so we have a good one and one that I empathize with a lot as a marketer. The question is, for a team with limited time, what's the most important first step?
Yeah, that's a great one. Prioritization, something we all probably have to do on a daily basis. And again, this we'll get into this in our other webinars as well. So I'm excited about this question. Um, so a couple of things that you could do like right now this afternoon, and I mentioned this first thing is I'd go and take a look at my organic traffic. I want to understand how is this impacting my business now? Am I losing organic traffic potentially to AI search? So whatever you use to measure your website performance, whether it's Google Analytics or some other tool, I would go and take a look. Is my organic traffic dropping? Is it flattening? Right? Those might be indicators that I am no longer getting as much organic traffic, and that might be caused by AI search. Okay, so that's the first thing I do. The second thing I do is I'd start to think about a little bit of an AI content plan. You know, again, as I mentioned before, relevance is really important. And relevance pertains to the questions that people ask AI. So I'd start to be thinking about like, am I answering those questions in my content, right? I would talk to maybe my commercial people, or maybe I'll look at contact forms or just go back over conversations I have with customers and think about what are the top 10 or 20 questions that they ask. Um, it might be their objections, right? What are they concerned about from buying from me? They might be asking about competitor comparisons, right? These are all things that they might ask AI. And having content about those things will help position me better to be chosen by AI when someone asks those questions. And then maybe one more thing that I might start to think about is not only what content can I create, but like, are people talking about my brand and where are they talking about my brand, right? Um, I know I mentioned this earlier, but like in that whole ranking part, AI systems are looking to get validation about my claims as a business, right? They're looking for that real, genuine human experience and information about that, right? And so if people are talking about those experiences on other websites, on other platforms, I want to know about it, right? So I would want to start to get an understanding for what's happening there, because ultimately that's going to be critically important to AI visibility. It's not just me answering questions about my business and my brand on my website. It's also about those other conversations happening on third-party websites about that real human experience. So I would try to get my arms around that. What's my plan? What's my strategy there? And as I mentioned, we're going to dive into all of these things in the next couple of webinars. So this was a great question and hopefully gave you a little bit of taste of the things we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a very thorough answer and gives me a good indication of what I should be thinking about next. Well, that is it, everyone. Thank you so much for attending today. And Justin, thank you for your wonderful talk too. It's been great to listen and learn from you. If you enjoyed that session, we hope to see you at the next one where we're going to get a little more tactical and dive a little deeper into this topic. So that's coming up on March 10. Again, that's the AI Visibility Playbook. We hope to see you there. Thanks.